This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by SpyCloud. Stolen data circulating on the criminal underground is fuel for data breaches, account takeover, ransomware attacks, and online fraud. Your biggest security risk might be a breach or malware infection outside of your control that leaks the data of your users. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, powering solutions that proactively protect over 2 billion employees and consumers worldwide. Learn how to make recaptured data your best defense at spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire.
Bogus DDoS protection pages distribute malware. Estonia deals with DDoS attacks. Roskomnadzor's internet panopticon. Rick Howard on the RSA Security Breach of 2011 and the Equifax breach of 2017. Caleb Barlow on what does a recession mean for cybersecurity venture capital and what is the impact of this on the industry. And data tampering attacks are regarded as a growing risk. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Trey Hester, filling in for Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for August 22nd, 2022. Researchers at Securi warn that fake DDoS protection pages, the sort that ask visitors to perform a browser check before proceeding, are distributing malware in drive-by attacks. Securi writes, quote, "Unfortunately, attackers have begun leveraging these familiar security assets in their own malware campaigns. We recently discovered a malicious JavaScript injection affecting WordPress websites, which results in a fake Cloudflare DDoS protection pop-up." End quote. Since these types of browser checks are so common on the web, many users wouldn't think twice before clicking this prompt to access the websites they're trying to visit. However, the prompt actually downloads a malicious .iso file onto the victim's computer. End quote. The file is a remote access Trojan. The malicious site is an imposter, and there's no compromise of Cloudflare itself. Info Security magazine speaks with Estonian officials concerned to mitigate the effects of distributed denial of service attacks the country has sustained this month. Tanu Tamer, head of the Incident Response Department of the Estonian Information System Authority, said that the campaign peaked last week, on the 16th and 17th. Quote, "The attack against the website of emta.ee, which is the homepage of Estonian Tax and Customs Board, on August 17th had the most visible effect, with the website being unavailable from 12:30 p.m. to 1:40 p.m. After changing the settings and implementing additional defense mechanisms, it was possible to use the website again. Still, all the services were functional and only the web page itself was affected." End quote. Tamer credits defensive preparations and adequate resourcing with having given Estonia the means of mitigating the effects of the attack. The campaign was claimed by Killnet. The proximate cause of recent attacks has been, as it was seen in 2007, Estonia's removal of Soviet-era Second World War memorials. There may be more pretexts for follow-on attacks. Russia's FSB has claimed that the assassin who killed Russian ultra-nationalist media personality Daria Alexandrovna Dugin has taken refuge in Estonia, from where Russia has demanded her extradition. The identification of the assassin is unconfirmed, and there's no reason, beyond the FSB's word, to think that the assassin has taken refuge in Estonia. Latvia's government, undeterred by recent cyber operations against Estonian online resources, has begun dismantling a very large Second World War memorial in Riga. This one was erected in 1985, Bloomberg reports, near the end of Soviet power. It's come to be regarded as a symbol of nationalism, which is why the Latvian government is taking it down. Citing Kommersant, BleepingComputer reports that Roskomnadzor, the Russian internet watchdog, has contracted for the development of a tool that will automate internet scanning to identify objectionable material. The projected tool, known as Oculus, is described as a neural network that will use artificial intelligence to scan websites for prohibited information. The automatic scanner will analyze URLs, images, videos, and chats on websites, forums, social media, and even chat and messenger channels to locate material that should be redacted or taken down. Roskomnadzor wants Oculus to be ready on December 12th of this year. The agency has lowballed the contract at 57.7 million rubles, or about $965,000, which observers think is grossly inadequate to fund such an ambitious project. And finally, Protocol discusses data tampering attacks with security experts. While the risk remains more potential than actual, such attacks have occurred, and they're regarded as particularly disturbing. They're difficult to detect and can be highly consequential. The risk is the integrity of an organization's own data. It's not simple data theft, as in doxing or cyber espionage, or denial of access to data, as in traditional ransomware, but it represents a quiet threat to the data themselves. Information an organization relies on for decision-making could be manipulated, corrupting the decision-making itself, and medical imagery could be altered with damaging, potentially lethal consequences, or adversarial machine learning could alter the data used to train artificial intelligence with the eventual consequences for the AI's operation. It's a disturbing possibility and another thing for CISOs to worry about. If you can't trust your data, whom can you trust?
And now, a word from our sponsor, Recorded Future. Staying one step ahead of the rapidly evolving threat landscape requires a constant flow of daily intelligence. To stay up to date on everything happening in the world of cybersecurity, join over 50,000 other security professionals who subscribe to the Cyber Daily. With daily email updates on the latest cybersecurity news, top threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more, the Cyber Daily is the first thing security professionals check every morning. To learn more and subscribe for free, go to recordedfuture.com/cyber-daily. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. And it is always my pleasure to welcome back to the show the CyberWire's own Rick Howard. He is our Chief Security Officer, also our Chief Analyst. Rick, welcome back.
Hey, Dave.
So on this week's CSO Perspectives Pro podcast, you are covering two infamous cybersecurity espionage attacks conducted by the Chinese government. You've got the RSA Security Breach of 2011 and the Equifax Breach of 2017. First of all, what made you pick those two to highlight?
Well, because they are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to crisis communications planning. On the one end, we have RSA Security, where the Chinese government stole the C values of the RSA Secure ID token product. That's I don't know if you remember this, Dave, but that was the two-factor authentication device, and back then used by tens of millions of users in government and the military agencies, defense contractors, banks, and countless corporations around the world. Yeah. This event, it should have scuttled their company, and it didn't. And it's largely due to how their CEO, Art Coviello, managed the communications plan. Because within a quarter of the breach, RSA Security made record profits again. All right, so that's an interesting case. And then contrast that with Equifax, where another Chinese government hacker group stole the PII of some 143 million U.S. consumers. That's 60% of the U.S. population. And in the end of that exercise, all right, 4 executives lost their jobs, including the CEO and the CISO. The U.S. House Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection Subcommittee hauled the CEO in to explain himself, and the total cost to recover was north of $1.4 billion plus any legal fees. And that was largely due to how the CEO bungled the communications plan. So in this episode of CSO Perspectives Pro, we're going to talk about why, in terms of crisis planning, did RSA Security do so well and why Equifax didn't.
All right. So that is on the pro side. That's our subscription side. How about on the public side, the ad-supported side this week?
Yeah, well, if you remember from last week's show, I was talking about the concept of adversary playbooks, and they're kind of the next step in thinking once you get your head around the Lockheed Martin intrusion kill chain model, the U.S. Department of Defense's Diamond model, and the MITRE ATT&CK framework. adversary playbooks are an attempt to pull all of that together into one bag. Well, as you might know, Dave, I didn't come up with that idea myself, all right? I'm not smart enough. My partner in crime for that paper that we eventually published on the subject was Ryan Olson, currently the VP of Threat Intelligence at Palo Alto Networks. So I brought him onto the show to discuss the current state of adversary playbooks and what needs to be done now to take the next step.
Well, before I let you go, what is the phrase of the week on your Word Notes podcast?
This week's word is micro-segmentation, okay? And we've come a long way from those early internet days back in the 1990s when we thought to segment sensitive information from normal day-to-day network traffic by running separate physical cables and fibers. Today, especially in cloud environments, we can do it all in software, and micro-segmentation is the latest tactic that we might use to implement this zero-trust concept.
All right, lots of interesting stuff this week. You can find out more about all of that by visiting our website, thecyberwire.com. Rick Howard, thanks for joining us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Axonius. Too many cybersecurity assets and SaaS apps, not enough visibility? Enter Axonius. The Axonius solution correlates asset data from existing solutions to provide an always up-to-date inventory, uncover gaps, and automate action, giving IT and security teams the confidence to control complexity. Visit axonius.com/cyberwire to learn more and try it free. That's axonius.com/cyberwire. And we thank Axonius for sponsoring our show. And it is my pleasure to welcome back to the CyberWire Caleb Barlow. He is the CEO of Cylete. Caleb, it's always great to welcome you back. I want to touch base with you today on where we stand in terms of venture capital. And we have this looming possibility, specter, I would say, of a recession. What sort of things are you hearing about how that might affect venture capital in cyber?
Well, first of all, everybody's debating, are we in a recession or not? But I do think there's a few things we can acknowledge, right? Labor markets are still red hot, even though some companies are starting to slow down as, supply chain issues start to get worked out. But just as, cybersecurity was becoming a mainstream industry in the last recession, kind of back in 2008 or so, we don't really have a good baseline on what the likely impact is of recessionary trends in cybersecurity. Now, one of the things, as I was looking at this, Dave, that I think is really important to underscore is nearly every CEO in a security vendor has growth-focused skills, right? Because that's all we've been dealing with over the last 10 years or so is growth in this industry. And as we switch back to profitability-focused skills, this could be a real challenge for some leaders to be able to kind of pivot and shift gears. And we're already seeing examples of where venture capital is slowing down or pausing a bit. Valuation and funding rounds will probably be a bit lower. So, I do think there's a bit of a cautionary tale here of maybe pumping the brakes a bit. But at the same time, we got to talk a little bit about what's likely to happen in labor markets and what's likely to happen, in terms of funding rounds.
Yeah. I mean, how do we reconcile the two sides of the stories still come out about how there aren't enough people to hire, there are all these empty jobs, and on the other hand, I'm starting to hear stories of some cybersecurity companies doing rounds of layoffs?
Well, I think one of the things we have to recognize is that, we still have over 700,000 open unfilled jobs just in the United States in this field. So, we're probably likely to see slowdowns in people filling jobs. Think outside of kind of the vendor market, but in, more traditional critical infrastructure companies where maybe those businesses are slowing down in general. There's certainly a good chance you may see hiring freezes, potentially even layoffs or hiring holds. But I do think that doesn't necessarily mean if you're a cybersecurity professional, you're going to be unemployed. What it might mean is you change jobs, or that 700,000 open jobs start to maybe reduce down a few 100,000 jobs as people start to fill the gap that's been open for so long.
What about on the venture capital side? Is there pumping of the brakes happening there?
Well, I mean, we're in a world where lots of people were taking down $100 million plus rounds if you look at kind of the cybersecurity vendors. And the big thing you're going to see a shift in is a movement from growth-focused metrics to profitability and EBITDA-focused metrics. And this is going to be the case in any kind of recessionary trend. What investors are going to look to see is, can you turn this company into a profitable one? And of course, there's a couple of strategies there. One is bring down enough money to weather the storm. Figure 3 to 4 years at a minimum. But the problem there is, if you don't pump the brakes a bit on your spending, you don't want to come out of a recessionary trend still not profitable when all of your peers focused on profitability and have a really high burn rate. On the other hand, if you're a company that can maybe pump the brakes a bit, switch your leadership and thinking to free cash flow and profitability versus rapid growth, you might be in a position where not only can you weather the storm longer with the capital you have, but you're going to look much better coming out the other side when everybody's focused on those types of metrics.
What's your advice then? I mean, for that CEO, that board of directors who's looking to maybe weather this storm, any words of wisdom there?
Well, I think the first thing is recognize the skills you have and the skills you don't, right? I mean, the folks in leadership positions that really weathered the last storm, and 2008 was mostly an impact on, for example, the auto industry and banking. It really didn't have an impact on the cybersecurity or technology industries even. You have to go all the way back really to 2000. So you're talking about the last leaders that weathered this are probably in their 50s now, which, is not the demographic that makes up a lot of CEOs and cybersecurity companies. So the first thing is, have those mentoring relationships, have those peers, and understand the metrics on which you're going to be measured are probably totally different than the metrics on which you've been measured for the last 5 or 10 years. In addition to that, really watch your term sheets when you're going forward for another round. What's in those term sheets? Preferred stock, anti-dilution provisions. I mean, now is the time to pay attention to what are you signing up for, and the best deal might not be just the biggest deal, which is what I think everybody always used to get enamored with. But also watch what's happening. We already see public software, public security software companies are down in the first half, go along with the rest of the market. But this is going to be a proxy for valuations, Dave, which are already showing signs of impact and people slowing down.
All right, interesting times. Caleb Barlow, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Devo, whose cloud-native logging and security analytics platform is built to transform security operations for today and beyond. Visit devo.com to learn more.
And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of DataTribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technology. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Brandon Karp, Eliana White, Ru Prakash, Liz Irvin, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Coral Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Trey Hester, filling in for Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hi, this is Jen Iben. I'm the senior producer and one of the founders here at the CyberWire. I'm really excited to share with you that our Women in Cybersecurity reception is returning this fall. We started the event back in 2014 to bring women working in the industry together. We all know there's a need to increase diversity in cybersecurity, and we wanted to find some ways to help connect those already in the industry and encourage more women to join our ranks. Is your company also passionate about empowering women to succeed in cybersecurity? I'd invite you to join us as a sponsor. We have limited sponsor spots available. Visit thecyberwire.com/WCS to find out more. And thanks for listening.